Supermen.
I don't think so. You sound great. I'm the one that usually sounds like crap, but you sound great, as usual.
Thanks, buddy.
You're welcome. All right, welcome back to Mild Mannered Supermen. If you are just checking us out for the first time, the deal is we're just Genesis fans and have started a Genesis podcast. I am just kind of purely a fan who kind of discovered the old Genesis stuff with Peter Gabriel like maybe 2, 3 years ago, but grew up with Genesis in the 80s. Born in 78, so kind of prime time for all that, Invisible Touch and No Jacket Required and Sledgehammer stuff from these guys. And my brother Jake here, we like to get together once a week and talk about this because we live like 800 miles apart, and it's fun to see each other this way and talk about something that we're both passionate about. But he brings an interesting twist to all of this Genesis lore as a professional musician. So, Jake, why don't you give him a quick hello and what's up about you?
Hey there. What's up, my brother?
Hey, good to
Always,
see you.
always fun to talk to you. Yeah. Yeah. So, I didn't realize we were doing introductions over again.
We don't have to. I mean, they can go watch. They can go listen to the musical box episode or any of the other ones. But who knows? Somebody might be joining for the first time and wants to know who the heck these guys are talking and why I
Absolutely.
should care.
Yeah. We got a fun one today. We have a real piece of music here, right? And I kind of use air quotes when I do that because I think you know where I'm going
Hmm.
with it. And you and I had kind of discussed this before we decided to actually do this episode on this particular song. And kind of in retrospect, I can't believe that this song actually was on the butcher block for a second. Like, we kind of thought about maybe not doing it. Um, I'm very glad that we decided to. I think what it does, at least in my mind, is it aside from just being a great song, it gives us some of Tony Banks' best early material. And I think it's very telling as to who Tony Banks really kind of is, right? And I think that comes through in this track probably better than any of the other early tracks, right? This, at least to me, is just Tony Banks. This is a Tony Banks song, and I say that beyond just kind of saying this is a song because I would normally say, this is a song clearly written by a piano player, right? It's got these
Right.
big luscious chords. We should probably tell them what song it is. Um, so drum roll, please. Big luscious chords. Tony Banks song. Early Genesis. What
We're
do we
bringing
have, Jared?
you we're bringing you Seven Stones from Nursery
Nursery
Cryme
Cryme.
album. Yes, yes, it's Seven Stones. And to your exact point, this one for me wasn't one that I was thinking about featuring. And last week when we were wrapping up, you said, "Well, what about Seven Stones before we move on?" And it took me probably half the week before I was like, you know what? He's fucking right. Like, let's do Seven Stones. And that's what I love about this journey with you is like it's forcing me to go back and kind of revisit some of this stuff. I'm very eager to get to the next album and to kind of focus in on like I just can't wait to get to Supper's Ready. Like I just will
I
admit
can
it.
tell you're
Like
driving towards it.
I know I'll just admit it. Like I want to get to that as fast as possible. But I also think it's really important for us to just like take a beat and recognize like what this song means in relation to the history of Genesis, because there's just so much to unpack with this one. So I'm excited to hear your take on it because I've been listening to it pretty much nonstop all week, and that's new for me. Certainly not a skippable song. It wasn't one that I ever skipped listening to Nursery Crime, but it was one that I just kind of listened like it was there. And now I've really gone back and paid close attention to the lyrics, and I've done some research into it and have what I think is kind of an interesting take on what this might be about when you get into the brain of Tony Banks, not just who he was as a musician and as an artist, but where he was as a very young man when putting this piece of music down on as a recording.
Yeah, that's some good stuff there. I totally agree. There's to me the meaning of this song kind of jumps out at you, right? I mean, you have to do a little bit of thinking about kind of the philosophy of it, but to me, what's going on here in the narrative is ultimately this is a song. I kind of almost take it as a warning, right? This is an old man who's trying to tell you that no matter what you do and what you think you know and how much you think you can control things, little twists, little changes that you yourself can make in your own life or do make in your own life have just completely unforeseen repercussions that come and get you down the road, right? So here we have a couple of different vignettes that Peter presents. You have the tinker, and you have the sailor, and the farmer. And kind of in each one of these little stories, something is done, right? In the case of the
Hmm.
sailor, a small change is made to the rudder of the ship, to the direction of the ship to try and avoid a storm. But in that process, just miles down the road, as it were, he set a collision course for a rock, right? And the ship is going to crash into that rock. And he can't see that coming. Kind of the same with the farmer. The farmer wants to expand his business, right? He goes to a rich man, as it were, and ultimately gets screwed, right?
Yeah.
And kind of his hubris. He gets robbed, the way we kind of traditionally think of kind of corporate robber barons doing their thing. So there's a lot going on there in this song. So I kind of take it that way. And interested to get your take on this one.
Yeah, well, it's certainly kind of this meta narrative of three different tales happening, and then the constant theme is this old man who's kind of laughing throughout. And there's a lesson in his laughter, not to take it too seriously. And I found this like really compelling take on it, of all places, on Reddit. There's a Redditor named Lord Chozo, Chozo,
Nice.
who started to link this narrative to what was going on in Tony Banks' life at the time,
Mm,
and how, to your exact point, every small twist of fate could lead to either disaster or success. Because that tinker, through the seven stones, kind of ends up finding shelter. Um, and in some ways, just this band had just lost Anthony Phillips. Tony Banks very famously thought that losing Anthony Phillips was a disaster, and that they would not carry on. And in fact, it was Peter and Mike who really said, let's continue to roll on. They had a roadie at the time and a huge fan of the band who really was also in Tony's ear saying, you know what, let's give it another year. And in Tony's mind, he was like, I'm going to give this music thing another year. And they brought on Phil Collins. Maybe 3, 4 months later, they brought on Steve Hackett. This song was written kind of during that time. And as a result, just I think ties in really nicely with what Tony Banks was thinking about his aspirations and his career, and that timeline that he had put on whether this career was going to work or not. Because think about it, they had done From Genesis to Revelation, it sold like 600 copies. Trespass, as brilliant as it was, and we touched on a couple of the tunes from Trespass, it didn't sell well. They were gigging, but they weren't making a lot of money. And so here you are as a young man trying to figure out, like, is this what I'm going to do with my life? And now you look back at it and you're like, it's absurd that Tony Banks would ever question his worth. But in some ways, I just think this narrative is scripted out to tell a little bit about the demons that he was wrestling with.
Well, honestly, I think this is a feeling that most musicians can probably, serious musicians can probably relate to at some point or another. And this is the point where I point out that yes, I am a musician. I do education and everything else in it, but I don't work full time in music because it's hard. It's hard
Right.
to make a living, and I've definitely been there before. But as it stands, a day job, it's hard to beat. So, for what it's worth, at 20 years old, when you are, in a position to really kind of get out there and make it and play with bands and things like that, honestly, there's a 1 in 100 chance that something really positive happens for you. Otherwise, you're just on the
Hmm.
circuit, and you're just
Right.
like every other band, and you're just as good as every other musician that's out there. So Tony Banks, he knows his competition. He's every band in England's got a keyboard player. So I that's what an interesting take, Jarrett. That's one I didn't really think of.
I didn't. I
From
didn't. I didn't either. Lord Chozo did.
Yeah, that's well, props to Lord Chozo. That's I'll buy that for $1. I think to me, what really screams is just the refrains that we see here, right? That the old man is laughing at people's despair at how things do turn out in the world, because his knowledge here and what he's experienced is that chance rules everything, right? So it's all a roll of the dice when you think about it, and getting upset about it or thinking you can control it is probably the greatest waste of time at all, and that's why
Hmm.
he laughs. It's kind of a quasi insane laugh. He's figuring out there's we don't have control over our own destiny. What a wild thing. Now, whether you agree with that or not, it's still a powerful lyric. And there's something in here, Jarrett, that reminds me of an epitaph that I think you see in a lot of the English speaking world, but not so much here in America. So this was kind of a fun one to point out. And the way it goes is normally you're walking through a cemetery in England somewhere or in Scotland, and you come across a headstone that's got a bunch of skulls or bones or something, and carved out of it, either in the granite or whatever. Um, and the epitaph actually says, gaze upon me or look at me, traveler or whoever you might be. What I am now, you will become, right? And it's a reminder from beyond the grave that you're mortal and you're gonna die, right? And so no matter what you do, that fate comes for you. And I just there's so much folkiness to this song that I can't help feel that there's maybe a little of that in this as well. It's just the beware of who you are and the hubris you might have, right? Because it's gonna get you in the end.
Yeah. 100%. Absolutely. What I am struck by too, and I'm so glad that you got me to like kind of revisit this song because it is a Tony Banks cabaret, if you will. I actually, Mike Rutherford said in his book, Seven Stones was very much Tony's song. It was a great example of what I've come to call Tony's cabaret chords, his big schmaltzy music hall chords, which Phil and I struggled with, but he loved. In the end, we had to make a rule. Tony could have 3 or 4 per album and no more. and 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 maybe that's why I overlooked this one, because in some ways this song could literally be lifted and dropped onto Wind and Wuthering. And that album is particularly dominated by these Tony Banks big schmaltzy music hall songs. So,
Right, yeah.
which ultimately led to Steve Hackett being like, "There's no room for me here. I'm out." Um, but like again, I don't think I really realized the impact that he was having this early on with this type of song that goes on to become just a pretty common Genesis standard throughout their entire history, no matter what the lineup was or the format of the band was. Tony's always there.
Yeah, and it's central to the composition of just the music in general. One thing I've realized in kind of looking back at this song is one of the things, and it's kind of this. Um, I find this a fun observation. If we'll see how accurate it is. But what I feel like Tony Banks is trying to do, just as a general Tony Banks kind of MO, he's trying to avoid any traditional harmonic resolution. And what I mean by that is that you have these big, and you look at Pink Floyd, they're a great example. They're big on very traditional harmonic minor chord progressions. So you've got your ones, your fours, your fives. Your fives resolve to ones, right? And if you kind of stray out of that, every now and again you'll get a six, minor six that'll throw you for a loop. But for the most part, these are traditional common era big church chord progressions, right? And they work for rock and roll. Tony Banks is very, very different. And again, I'm going to have to draw an English comparison here to a different medium. Monty Python, right? Monty Python, they were out to revolutionize their own comedy by effectively just not writing endings to their sketches. They thought kind of the corniest thing you could do was end a sketch with a joke. So what you see, and just probably most of the quirkiness of that group comes from their desire to just never end a sketch with a joke, traditionally. I think Tony Banks is following a very similar mindset. Just never end with a dominant to tonic chord progression. You can't have that big 5-to-1 resolution, right? What he winds up doing is borrowing chords from other keys. And when we look at the key signature of this particular song, again, surprise, it's hard to nail down. It's mostly E major and G major, but there's a fair amount of A minor in here, and none of those things are really related strongly to each other than their modal borrowings, right? So when Tony gets to a point where he's playing that big dominant 5, instead of moving it to the 1 where almost all of us expect it to go, he moves it to a 4 or a 7 from a from a different key, and that's what creates this sound that we get in this song that is, again, I think so Tony Banks, but also so unsettled, because it never really resolves the way we're expecting it to, musically. And that's what I think makes this song great, is that, that coupled with the lyricism, these aspects of kind of warning you about fate. This is a powerful song.
Well, I think you just queued it up. So let's get into it.
I heard the old man tell his tale.
Here he goes.
Alone within a storm.
Starts off really strongly in a major key, moves modal.
And losing hope, he clears the leaves beneath the tree. 7 stones lay on the ground. Within the 7th house, a friend was found. And the changes of no consequence will pick up the reins from nowhere. Sailors in peril on the sea. Amongst the waves are rock flows near.
Nice little Tony Banks kind of These are those big schmaltzy chords. Really effective use of the organ throughout here.
Here comes the flute.
I like this a lot, actually. It's the, the kind of playful Banks using that piccolo stop, I guess. I'm not sure quite what that is. It's a flute stop of some kind on an organ. And then the live flute.
Farmer who knows not when to sow.
We're also going to get a healthy shot from the Mellotron here.
Consults the old man clutching money in his hand. With a shrug, the old man smiled, took the money, left the farmer wild, and the changes of no consequence will pick up the reins from nowhere. Nowhere.
Big schmaltzy chords again.
Yeah, it definitely has a more typical song structure.
Another nice little duo here, a little duet.
The old man's guiding charm.
Gets really proggy right here.
This is the chance aspect, right? Here's the Mellotron, big time. So haunting, right? And I'm assuming this is the same instrument that they got from King Crimson, right? And Banks talks about this Mellotron as being slightly out of tune, and I think you can actually hear that maybe a little bit right here. It's haunting.
Yeah, he makes it work.
It's beautiful. And for 1971, just to be able to control live string audio, I mean, it's a sample, right? But that's an actual recording of a string orchestra that you can control with your fingers. That's got to feel awesome.
That little bit always reminds me of Duke, the little interlude between Duke's Travels and Duke's End. That little outro by Banks.
And I almost wonder if that served as inspiration or if it was a little bit of an inside joke, all those years later on the Duke album, that he played a very similar little ditty, just with those last few little key presses he makes.
Do you think maybe that's a callback? Maybe he was trying to say something?
I think maybe so. Like, hey, look at us now. Like, we've made it. I mean,
well, we'll have to explore that when we get to Duke. So
yeah,
certainly,
yeah,
folks
yeah.
will want to tune in for that one.
Let's get to Duke. Let's go. I'm ready. I haven't stopped listening to Duke like over the last 3 weeks or so. So just constantly on my playlist.
It's one of my favorites too. Yeah, it's been popping up a lot.
So, I mean, this isn't a song about, kings or betrayal or, just it's just a song about stories, and it fits the narrative that we've been talking about nursery crime so well. Where almost where I've been wanting to ask you this question, like, is Nursery Crime a concept album? You know, I mean,
Yeah.
I never looked at it that way, but now that I really think about it, every song on it comes off as a fairy tale, as a collection of stories that are told so well and in such a compelling way that uh, they clearly had a concept going into it and they pulled it off.
Agreed. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a concept album in like the traditional sense, but I think there was a concept behind this album, and
Right, right.
it's not a Tommy or The Wall, but it is definitely telling a story, if not a little more abstract. And what I like about it is it's maybe a little more akin to Days of Future Past by Moody Blues, right? Which is
Mm,
just a collection of songs that are all tied together by a common theme, but are not necessarily interrelated like they would be in a proper concept album. As we've come
right.
to understand that now. That of course raises the question of what do we mean by concept album, and can't that mean so many other things? And in my mind, Jarrett, and in my what I would consider probably looser definition, I think you're onto something. I definitely look at this as a concept album, as one that's driven by the theme of kind of young men kind of looking back at a relatively early point in their lives and taking stock of what they've experienced thus far against the expectations that were set from their childhood, right?
Hmm.
Um, and I think if we put it maybe in that light, it's this song in particular it speaks to me that way. This is a hey, we don't know, but we're wise enough to know that we don't know, and that says something.
Yeah. What else can you say? I mean, what else can you say? I mean, I'm so glad that you had me kind of look at it and do it. I didn't finish that Mike Rutherford quote earlier, but he goes on in his autobiography. I think I ended it saying, Tony could have three or four per
Mm.
album, but no more. And then he says, we always wondered what happened to the other ones that we had turned down. And then in 2011, Tony released a wonderful classical album, and we found out. I would love to think that we will venture into that classical album at some point, and I need to add that to my playlist and listen to it because I have become a huge fan of everything that Tony Banks has done, both in the band and outside of the band. Even the music that he wrote for B-rated movies that went out, um, and his solo stuff, even The Fugitive, I'm a big fan of, but. Just, I think taking a beat and paying attention to some of the things that he did very early on, very successfully on the Nursery Crime album was a meaningful little exit ramp for us to take.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been really fun.
Yeah. All right. So until next time, we are Mild Mannered Supermen. We are enjoying bringing this to you every week, and stay tuned next week. Who knows what we're going to bring to you? Keep listening, and we'll keep doing it. Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate it. See you next time.
Peace.
Mild mannered Superman, mild mannered Superman, mild mannered Superman.